Today we are going to look at a very important idea together. It is an idea that has the power to completely change the way you talk to women and the way they feel when they are around you. This becomes even more important as you get older and start caring less about playing games and more about creating something real. Most men spend years chasing the wrong things. They focus on appearance. They focus on money. They focus on status. They spend endless hours trying to figure out the perfect text message or the perfect thing to say. Yet despite all that effort, many of them still find themselves having conversations that go nowhere. They leave interactions wondering why a woman seemed interested at first but slowly lost enthusiasm. The interesting part is that attraction is rarely created the way most people think it is. It is not usually built through clever lines or carefully planned strategies. It is not built through pretending to be someone you are not. In fact, some of the most attractive men are not the loudest men in the room. They are not always the most handsome. They are not always the wealthiest. What separates them is often something much simpler. They have learned how to communicate in a way that creates clarity instead of confusion. They know how to express themselves without hiding behind uncertainty. And women feel that difference immediately. Think about how many conversations people have every day that never really go anywhere. Someone asks how your day was. Someone talks about work. Someone makes a joke. The interaction is pleasant enough, but by the next day, neither person remembers much about it. Nothing meaningful happened. Nothing stood out. It was simply another stood out. It was simply another conversation. Now think about the rare moments you still remember years later. Usually those moments involve someone being unexpectedly honest, someone saying something genuine, someone expressing what they really thought instead of what they believed they were supposed to say. This is where many men unknowingly work against themselves. They become so focused on avoiding mistakes that they stop expressing anything real. They soften their opinions. They hide their intentions. They pretend not to care when they actually do. They convince themselves that being careful will protect them from rejection. What it often does instead is make them invisible. Not because they lack value, but because nobody can connect with a version of them that is constantly being filtered and edited. I want you to think honestly about your own experiences for a moment. How many times have you walked away from a conversation wishing you had said what you were actually thinking? How many times have you chosen a safer sentence instead of a truthful one? Most men have done this more times than they can count. It feels harmless in the moment, but over time it creates a habit of holding back. And the strange thing about holding back is that people can often feel it even when they cannot explain exactly what they are sensing. What we are going to explore today is not a trick. It is not a script. It is not something designed to manipulate anyone. It is a completely different way of communicating, a way that creates emotional impact because it is rooted in honesty and clarity. Once you understand it, you will start noticing how differently people respond when your words actually reflect what is happening inside you. And it all begins with a simple shift that most men overlook for years without ever realizing how much it changes everything. The shift begins when a man stops trying to be liked and starts trying to be understood. At first, those two things sound almost identical, but they create completely different experiences. A man who wants to be liked spends most of his time managing other people's reactions. He carefully watches every response. He adjusts his words. He removes anything that might create discomfort. His goal is approval. A man who wants to be understood operates differently. He still cares about other people, but he is no longer willing to hide who he is in order to earn their acceptance. He communicates with clarity because he values honesty more than immediate validation. This is where many men accidentally create their own frustration. Imagine a man texting a woman he genuinely enjoys talking to. He wants to see her again. He wants to spend time with her. Yet, instead of expressing that directly, he wraps the idea in uncertainty. He says something like, "Maybe we could hang out sometime if you're not too busy." On the surface, there is nothing wrong with those words. They sound polite. They sound safe. But emotionally, they don't create much movement. They leave everything floating in the air. There is no direction, no certainty, no clear expression of desire. Now imagine the same man expressing the exact same feeling differently. Instead of hiding behind uncertainty, he simply says, "I want to take you to dinner this weekend. There's a place I think you'd really enjoy." The difference is subtle, but the emotional impact is completely different. One statement is asking permission to have a desire. The other is taking ownership of it. Neither statement is controlling. Neither statement is demanding. The difference is clarity. One man is hoping she figures out what he wants. The other man is comfortable enough to tell her. This is why the phrase "I want" is so powerful. It is not powerful because the words themselves are magical. It is powerful because of what they communicate. They communicate direction. They communicate self-awareness. They communicate a man who knows what he feels and is not afraid to express it. In a world where so many people hesitate, overthink, and hide behind vague language, clarity becomes surprisingly attractive. What many men fail to realize is that uncertainty creates work. When a man constantly speaks in may, perhaps, and possibilities, the woman often ends up carrying the emotional burden of figuring out what he actually means. She has to decode his intentions. She has to guess whether he is interested. She has to determine whether he is serious. Clarity removes that burden. It creates a sense of ease because there is no mystery about where he stands. She may or may not agree with him, but she never has to wonder what he means. There is something else happening here as well. Every time a man says, "I want," in a genuine and grounded way, he is reinforcing trust in himself. He is practicing honesty. He is refusing to hide behind uncertainty. Over time, this changes not only how women respond to him, but how he experiences himself. He stops waiting for other people to tell him what he is allowed to feel. He stops apologizing for having preferences, desires, and intentions. He simply expresses them clearly and allows the other person to respond honestly. But there is an important piece missing. If a man only talks about what he wants, the conversation can become one-sided. Attraction is not built through desire alone. It is also built through recognition. A woman wants to know that she is being seen for who she is, not simply for the role she plays in someone else's story. And that is where the next shift becomes incredibly important, because it transforms a man's words from self-expression into genuine connection. The moment a man learns how to express what he wants clearly, something begins to change. His conversations become more direct. His intentions become easier to understand. Women no longer have to spend time guessing what he means. But clarity by itself is only half of the equation. If you only communicate your own desires, eventually the interaction starts feeling one-sided. It becomes focused on where you want to go, what you want to do, and what you want to experience. The missing piece is making the other person feel genuinely seen. Think about how rare it is to feel truly understood. Most people go through life receiving surface-level compliments. They hear that they look nice. They hear that they are attractive. They hear the same predictable observations over and over again. While there is nothing wrong with those comments, they rarely create a deep emotional impact because they are focused on what everyone else can already see. What people remember are the moments when someone notices something beneath the surface. They remember the moments when they feel recognized rather than simply observed. This is where the phrase "I appreciate" becomes incredibly powerful. Not because it flatters a woman, but because it tells her that you have been paying attention. Imagine finishing a long conversation and saying, "I appreciate the way you think about things. You notice details that most people miss." That feels very different from simply saying, "You're interesting." One statement is generic, the other is specific. One could be said to almost anyone, the other could only be said to her. Specificity creates emotional weight because it proves that your attention has been genuine. What makes this even more important is that appreciation speaks to a deeper human need. Most people spend a surprising amount of their lives feeling misunderstood. They adjust themselves depending on who they are around. They show certain sides of themselves while hiding others. They become accustomed to being seen in incomplete ways. When someone notices a quality they value in themselves, it creates a feeling of relief. It feels like being recognized. It feels like someone looked beyond the obvious and noticed something real. This is why meaningful appreciation is so different from praise. Praise often feels like evaluation. Appreciation feels like understanding. Praise says you did something good. Appreciation says, "I see something valuable in you." One focuses on performance. The other focuses on identity. Women, like everyone else, respond strongly to people who make them feel understood because understanding creates emotional safety. It creates the feeling that they do not have to constantly explain themselves in order to be accepted. Now imagine combining this with the clarity we discussed earlier. A man says what he wants without hesitation, but he also communicates what he appreciates without holding back. Suddenly, the interaction feels completely different. He is no longer hiding his intentions, and he is no longer overlooking the person standing in front of him. He is expressing desire while also expressing recognition. That combination creates something many men spend years searching for without realizing it. And yet there is another layer beneath both of these ideas. Because a woman is not only listening to the words you choose, she is paying attention to something else at the same time. Something that often determines whether your words feel believable or empty. It is the difference between hearing a sentence and feeling it. And once you understand that difference, you'll realize why two men can say the exact same thing and create completely different emotional reactions. This is where many men unknowingly lose the power of everything they have been trying to communicate. They learn a few good phrases. They understand the importance of clarity. They start expressing appreciation instead of giving empty compliments. Yet the results still feel inconsistent. One woman seems deeply affected by what they say, while another barely reacts at all. The reason is usually much simpler than they think. It is not the words, it is the connection between the words and the person saying them. Imagine two men saying the exact same sentence. Both look a woman in the eye and say, "I appreciate the way you think." The words are identical. The timing is similar. Yet one statement feels genuine and memorable, while the other feels forced. The difference comes from something most people struggle to explain. Human beings are constantly paying attention to signals beneath the surface. They listen to your voice. They notice your body language. They sense your emotional state. They are not only hearing your words, they are deciding whether those words match what they feel coming from you. This is why authenticity matters so much. A woman may not consciously analyze every detail of your behavior, but she can often sense when something feels off. If your words say confidence, but your energy says uncertainty, she notices it. If your words say appreciation, but your attention feels distracted, she notices that too. People are remarkably good at detecting inconsistency. It is one of the reasons some conversations feel effortless while others feel strangely uncomfortable even when nobody can explain exactly why. Think about a time when someone gave you a compliment that felt completely genuine. You probably remember the feeling. It landed differently, you believed it. Now think about a compliment that felt rehearsed or automatic. The words may have been positive, but they didn't create much impact because something about them felt disconnected. The same principle applies in attraction. Women respond most strongly when a man's words and emotions are moving in the same direction. When his communication feels aligned, his message becomes much more powerful. This is why slowing down matters. Many men rush through meaningful moments because they feel nervous. They say something important and immediately start talking again. They fill every quiet space because silence makes them uncomfortable. But confidence is not measured by how much you say. Very often, confidence is measured by how comfortable you are after you've said it. A man who can express something meaningful and then sit calmly with the moment creates a completely different experience than a man who immediately tries to explain, justify, or soften his own words. Imagine the end of a date. The conversation has gone well. There is a brief pause before you leave. Instead of filling the silence with nervous chatter, you simply look at her and say, "I want to see you again. I appreciate how easy it is to talk with you." Then you let the moment breathe. You don't rush to cover it up. You don't immediately change the subject. You allow the words to exist. That silence gives her space to feel what you just said instead of merely hearing it. And that is where communication starts becoming memorable. Not when it is clever, not when it is perfectly scripted, but when it feels real. Because attraction is rarely created by words alone. It is created when your words, your energy, and your presence all tell the same story. When that happens, a woman stops focusing on what you said and starts focusing on how you made her feel. And that feeling is often what stays with her long after the conversation is over. There is another piece to this that most men never think about, and yet it often determines whether a woman remembers them for a few minutes or for a very long time. It has nothing to do with appearance. It has nothing to do with status. It has nothing to do with saying the perfect thing. It comes down to the emotional experience she has while she is with you. Most men are focused on the outcome. They are thinking about getting the number, setting up the next date, or making sure she likes them. Because their attention is locked onto the result, they accidentally stop paying attention to the moment itself. You can often feel this when talking to someone. They are physically present, but mentally they are somewhere else. They are calculating. They are wondering how they are doing. They are trying to predict what will happen next. Every sentence becomes a test. Every reaction becomes a scorecard. The conversation starts feeling heavy because there is pressure behind everything. A woman may not consciously recognize what is happening, but she feels the tension. She feels that the interaction has become more about achieving a result than sharing an experience. Now compare that to a man who is fully present. He is not trying to force a connection. He is not trying to manufacture attraction. He is simply paying attention. When she speaks, he listens. When she laughs, he enjoys the moment. When the conversation shifts directions, he follows it naturally instead of dragging it back towards some predetermined goal. There is a calmness in the interaction because he is not constantly chasing the next step. Ironically, this often creates more attraction than all the strategies and techniques men spend years trying to learn. Think about the people you enjoy being around the most. Chances are they make you feel comfortable being yourself. They are not constantly evaluating you. They are not trying to win something from you. They are present. That presence creates freedom. It allows conversations to develop naturally. It allows genuine curiosity to emerge. Most importantly, it creates an environment where connection can grow without being forced. This is one reason certain people seem unforgettable, even though they are not necessarily the loudest or most impressive individuals in the room. What many men fail to realize is that emotional presence is becoming increasingly rare. People are distracted. They are checking phones. They are thinking about tomorrow while living through today. They are half listening while waiting for their turn to speak. When a woman encounters someone who is truly engaged, who is genuinely interested, and who is not constantly pulling his attention somewhere else, it stands out immediately. It feels different because it is different. This is where the phrases we have been discussing become even more powerful. I want creates direction. I appreciate creates recognition. But neither phrase reaches its full potential without presence. Presence is what gives those words life. It is what transforms them from sentences into experiences. A woman does not remember a statement simply because she heard it. She remembers it because of the emotional atmosphere surrounding it. She remembers how she felt when it was said. She remembers whether the moment felt real. This is where the phrases we have been discussing become even more powerful. I want creates direction. I appreciate creates recognition. But neither phrase reaches its full potential without presence. Presence is what gives those words life. It is what transforms them from sentences into experiences. A woman does not remember a statement simply because she heard it. She remembers it because of the emotional atmosphere surrounding it. She remembers how she felt when it was said. She remembers whether the moment felt real. What makes all of this so powerful is that it changes the way a woman remembers you after you are gone. Most men believe attraction happens during the conversation itself. They think the goal is to impress her while she is sitting across from them. They focus on getting the reaction they want in real time. If she laughs, they feel successful. If she smiles, they feel encouraged. If she seems interested, they relax. But the strongest connections are often not created in the moment. They are created afterward. They are created later that evening when she is driving home. They are created the next morning when she unexpectedly remembers something you said. They are created in those quiet moments when your presence continues to exist in her mind even though you are no longer physically there. This is why emotional impact matters so much more than performance. A performance can entertain someone for an hour. An emotional experience can stay with them for weeks. Think about the people you remember most from your own life. Chances are it is not because they told the best jokes or had the most interesting stories. It is because of the way they made you feel. Maybe they made you feel understood. Maybe they made you feel accepted. Those experiences leave a mark because they touch something deeper than simple conversation. Many men accidentally talk themselves out of creating that experience because they become obsessed with saying the perfect thing. They analyze every sentence. They search for techniques. They worry about whether a message is too long or too short. They focus on words while forgetting that people respond most strongly to feelings. A woman rarely sits at home replaying a conversation word for word. What she replays is the emotional atmosphere. She remembers whether she felt relaxed. She remembers whether she felt valued. She remembers whether she felt valued, whether the interaction felt different from the dozens of other conversations she has every week. This is one reason intention matters so much. When you say I want, you are creating direction. When you say I appreciate, you are creating recognition. But beneath both of those things is something even more important. You are creating emotional certainty. You are removing the confusion that fills so many modern interactions. Instead of forcing someone to guess how you feel, you are giving them clarity. Instead of hoping they somehow figure out what you mean, you are communicating honestly. That honesty becomes memorable because it is increasingly rare. Imagine how different most dating experiences would feel if people simply said what they meant. No endless guessing, no trying to decode mixed signals, no wondering whether someone's actions match their words, just clarity. A surprising amount of attraction comes from the relief that clarity creates. Human beings naturally move toward environments that feel emotionally simple. Not boring, not predictable. Simple in the sense that they do not require constant interpretation. They know where they stand. They know what is real. And this is where many men begin noticing something unexpected. The more honest they become, the less pressure they feel. They stop trying to manage every outcome. They stop trying to control how someone responds. They realize their job is not to convince a woman to like them. Their job is to communicate clearly enough that a real connection has the opportunity to develop. That shift changes everything because it moves a man out of performance and into authenticity. And authenticity has a way of creating emotional memories that last far longer than any clever line ever could. As a man becomes more comfortable communicating this way, something interesting starts happening. He stops chasing reactions and starts paying attention to connections. At first, that may not sound like a big difference, but it changes almost everything. Most people spend their lives looking for evidence that they are being accepted. They monitor every interaction. They look for signs. They search for reassurance. Because their attention is focused on the reaction, they often miss what is actually happening in front of them. They become so concerned with whether someone likes them that they never fully experience the person they are talking to. Imagine two conversations happening side by side. In the first conversation, a man is constantly evaluating himself. He wonders whether he sounds interesting enough. He wonders whether she finds him attractive. He wonders whether he is saying the right things. Even though he appears engaged, most of his attention is directed inward. He is focused on his own performance. In the second conversation, a man is genuinely curious about the woman sitting across from him. He listens carefully. He notices details. He responds to what she actually says instead of preparing his next line while she is still talking. One conversation feels like an interview. The other feels like a connection. Women often notice this difference immediately, not because they are analyzing it consciously, but because curiosity feels very different from validation seeking. A man who is looking for approval tends to pull energy toward himself. A man who is genuinely interested creates space for another person to exist. That space becomes incredibly valuable because so many people rarely experience it. Most interactions are filled with subtle competition. People want to impress each other. They want to be noticed. They want to be admired. Very few people make others feel deeply heard. This is why meaningful appreciation has such a powerful effect. When you tell a woman that you appreciate something specific about her, you are communicating more than admiration. You are communicating attention. You are showing her that you have been listening closely enough to notice something unique. That feeling can be surprisingly rare. Many people go through years of relationships without ever feeling fully seen. They are loved for what they do, how they look, or the role they play in someone else's life. Being appreciated for who they are creates a completely different emotional experience. The mistake many men make is assuming that attraction is built through intensity. They think they need bigger gestures, stronger emotions, or more dramatic conversations. In reality, attraction often grows through consistency. It grows when a woman repeatedly feels understood. It grows when she repeatedly feels relaxed around you. It grows when your words, your actions, and your energy all tell the same story. The strongest emotional connections are rarely built through a single moment. They are built through a series of experiences that gradually create trust. Trust is what allows one to lower their guard. It is what allows them to stop wondering who you are and start experiencing who you are. Every time your intentions are clear, every time your appreciation is genuine, and every time your presence feels real, you strengthen that trust. Over time, something remarkable happens. The conversation stops feeling like two people trying to impress each other and starts feeling like two people discovering whether they genuinely belong in each other's lives. And that discovery is far more powerful than attraction alone. Because attraction may create interest, but trust creates emotional investment. It creates the feeling that being around someone is not only enjoyable but meaningful. And once a woman begins associating you with that feeling, she starts looking forward to your presence in a way that goes far beyond simple attraction. As trust grows, something else begins to happen that many men completely overlook. The woman is no longer responding only to what you say. She is responding to who she becomes when she is around you. Most people think attraction is about finding the right person. In reality, a large part of attraction is about finding the right version of yourself. People naturally gravitate toward environments where they feel comfortable, accepted, and emotionally free. When someone consistently brings out the best parts of us, we begin associating them with those feelings. Think about the people you genuinely enjoy spending time with. It is rarely because they are perfect. It is rarely because every conversation is exciting. More often, it is because of how you feel in their presence. Around some people, you become guarded. You choose your words carefully. You feel pressure to perform. Around others, you relax almost immediately. You laugh more easily. You think more clearly. You feel like yourself. That difference has a powerful effect on attraction because people remember experiences that make them feel emotionally lighter. This is why communication rooted in clarity and appreciation becomes so impactful over time. A woman begins noticing that conversations with you feel different. There is less confusion, less guessing, less pressure. She does not have to constantly wonder what you mean because your intentions are clear. She does not have to wonder whether you value her because your appreciation is genuine and specific. Instead of feeling like she is navigating a maze, she feels like she is walking on solid ground. That emotional stability is incredibly attractive because it creates a sense of comfort that many modern interactions lack. What makes this even more powerful is that emotional comfort does not create boredom. Many people mistakenly believe that uncertainty is necessary for attraction. They think mixed signals create excitement. They think emotional confusion creates chemistry. While uncertainty can create temporary intensity, it rarely creates lasting connection. Lasting connection grows from emotional safety. It grows when two people feel free to be honest. It grows when conversations become easier instead of harder. It grows when trust replaces guessing. Imagine a woman lying awake at night thinking about the people she met that week. Most of the conversations begin fading from memory almost immediately. The small talk disappears. The predictable interactions blur together, but one conversation remains clear. Not because the man said anything extraordinary, but because she felt something different. She felt understood. She felt appreciated. She felt like she could relax. Those feelings create an emotional imprint that stays long after the actual words have been forgotten. This is why presence matters so much. When a man is fully present, he creates an experience rather than simply having a conversation. His attention feels focused. His appreciation feels real. His intentions feel honest. Nothing about the interaction feels forced. Women often describe this experience by saying things like, "There was just something different about him." They struggle to explain it because what they are remembering is not a specific sentence. They are remembering a feeling. And that feeling becomes the foundation of emotional connection. Because once a woman consistently feels seen, appreciated, and emotionally safe around a man, attraction starts evolving into something deeper. She stops focusing on whether she enjoys the conversation and starts looking forward to the person. She stops thinking about isolated moments and starts thinking about future ones. And that shift is often the point where a connection moves beyond curiosity and begins becoming genuinely meaningful. The interesting thing about meaningful connection is that it often looks very ordinary from the outside. If someone watched two people talking across a table, they might not notice anything special. There are no dramatic speeches, no grand gestures, no movie-like moments, just a conversation. Yet, inside that conversation, something important is happening. One person feels understood. One person feels valued. One person feels like they can finally stop performing and simply exist. Those experiences may seem small in the moment, but they are often the exact things that create lasting attraction. Most men spend years trying to become more attractive without realizing that attraction is often a byproduct of something else. They focus on techniques. They focus on strategies. They focus on finding ways to stand out. What they rarely focus on is the experience they create for another person. Think about the people who have had the biggest impact on your own life. Chances are it wasn't because they constantly impressed you, it was because they made you feel something meaningful. They made you feel respected. They made you feel understood. They made you feel like your thoughts and feelings mattered. This is why emotional clarity becomes so powerful over time. A woman begins to trust what she experiences around you because your words and actions remain consistent. You say what you mean. You appreciate what you genuinely value. You remain present instead of distracted. These qualities may not seem exciting in the way modern dating advice often describes excitement, but they create something far more important. They create reliability. They create emotional steadiness. They create the feeling that what she sees is what she gets. Reliability is deeply underrated because it doesn't create instant drama. It doesn't produce the emotional highs and lows that people often mistake for chemistry. What it does create is peace. And peace has a way of becoming more valuable the longer someone experiences it. Imagine spending time with a person who never leaves you wondering where you stand. A person who communicates honestly. A person whose appreciation feels sincere. A person whose actions consistently match their words. Over time, that consistency becomes incredibly attractive because it removes the emotional exhaustion that so many people have come to expect from relationships. The irony is that many men already possess the ability to communicate this way. The problem is not that they lack the skill. The problem is that they often talk themselves out of using it. They assume they need something more complicated. They assume attraction requires a special technique. So they ignore the simple things that actually create connection. They hold back what they want to say. They avoid expressing appreciation because it feels vulnerable. They fill every silence because they are afraid of what might happen if they stop talking. In doing so, they accidentally weaken the very qualities that make them memorable. When a man learns to trust simplicity, everything begins changing. He stops trying to manufacture attraction and starts creating genuine experiences instead. He understands that emotional connection is not built through perfection. It is built through honesty. It is built through appreciation. It is built through presence. Those three qualities create an emotional atmosphere that people remember because it feels increasingly rare in a world filled with distraction, uncertainty, and performance. And this is where the deeper lesson finally begins to emerge. Because what women respond to most strongly is not a particular phrase or technique. It is the feeling of being with someone who is comfortable enough to be real. Someone who knows what he wants, appreciates what is valuable, and is present enough to make another person feel truly seen. Once you understand that, you stop looking for shortcuts and start building something far more powerful: genuine connection. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want you to notice something. We started by talking about attraction, but we discovered that the qualities people remember most are often the qualities that have nothing to do with appearance, status, or clever words. They have everything to do with how you make another person feel. That truth gets overlooked because it is simple. People naturally assume something so powerful must also be complicated. They assume there must be a secret formula. They assume attraction is reserved for people with extraordinary advantages. Yet the strongest connections are often built through ordinary moments handled with extraordinary honesty. Think back to everything we explored together. A man learns to express what he wants instead of hiding behind uncertainty. He learns to communicate appreciation instead of offering generic compliments. He learns to be fully present instead of constantly worrying about the outcome. None of these things require perfect timing. None of them require a certain age, a certain income, or a certain appearance. What they require is courage. The courage to be honest about your intentions. The courage to recognize value in another person and express it. The courage to remain present instead of disappearing into fear, doubt, or overthinking. The reason this works so well is because it creates something every human being is searching for. It creates clarity. Most people spend their lives navigating uncertainty. They wonder what others mean. They wonder whether they are truly valued or simply tolerated. When someone enters their life and communicates with honesty, appreciation, and presence, it feels different immediately. There is less confusion, less emotional noise, less guessing. The interaction becomes easier because it is real. And reality has a way of standing out in a world where so many people are performing. What many men eventually discover is that this approach changes more than their relationships. It changes the way they experience themselves. They stop waiting for permission to express what they feel. They stop filtering every thought through fear of rejection. They stop chasing approval and start valuing authenticity. That shift creates a quiet confidence that cannot be faked because it comes from alignment. Their words match their intentions. Their intentions match their actions. Their actions match who they truly are. People feel that consistency and it creates trust naturally. The beautiful part is that none of this requires you to become someone new. It requires you to become more honest about who you already are. It requires you to stop hiding behind uncertainty and start communicating with clarity. It requires you to stop looking for tricks and start paying attention to connection. The men who create the deepest attraction are rarely the men trying hardest to impress. They are usually the men who have learned how to be genuine without apology and present without distraction. So the next time you have a meaningful conversation, remember this. Be clear about what you want. Be specific about what you appreciate. Be present enough to let your words have weight. Those simple shifts can transform the way people experience you because they transform the quality of the connection itself. If this conversation gave you a new perspective, comment the word clarity below. I'd love to know who stayed with me all the way to the end. And if you've ever realized that honesty created a stronger connection than any strategy ever could, share your experience in the comments. Subscribe to Maya Bennett and turn on notifications for more conversations about female psychology, attraction, relationships, and the hidden qualities that make people unforgettable. Until next time, remember that the most powerful thing you can bring into any interaction is not a perfect line. It is a clear intention, genuine appreciation, and your full presence.